Hello, friends. I am Chevy. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? Hope it's fantastic. I have the Kindle with me today because I read a book and we're going to do a book review. Haven't done one of those in a little bit. By a little bit, I mean a couple weeks. Last week, I read The Kings of the WYLD by Nicholas Eames. The Kings of the WYLD was published. I don't know when. It's fairly recent, within the last 3 years, I think. It's Nicholas's first book, his debut novel, and it's a pretty quick read. It's definitely an adult read. It's not middle grade or YA or anything like that, and it has some complex subjects and complex word choice, that sort of stuff. So it is a little bit. There's a little bit involved in the reading of it, but overall, the story. The premise of the book is, what if bands of mercenaries in a fantasy setting were treated like rock stars? They literally went on tour and came back with their riches and prisoners and creatures or whatever, or they fought in arenas and headlined, and that's the premise. What if it was like that? And what if an old washed up retired band came out of retirement for one last gig? That's the story. It's a quick read, like I said, because it's really the main character. Clay Cooper is the main character, who we are supposed to be he's the character we're supposed to feel for and be attached to. Kind of gets pulled along on this adventure because his friend, the front man of Kings of the WYLD, Saga was their band name. The front man's daughter is missing, and they're gonna go find her. And she's not missing. They know where she is. She's in a city that's under siege currently by monsters. Clay has a daughter, and his daughter says something to him that basically, go do it. You would, he goes, okay, fine. He has no real reason to do this. He's just okay. And so they go, set off across the world to get the band back together. It is very much like an action movie, popcorn summer blockbuster in a book. There's really not a lot of characters. There is character development. Not a ton. There is some. But it's not really about them. It's just about this band of adventurers going on this crazy quest to do something that is way outside of their means. And that's it. And it's just scene after scene after scene of them being completely, befuddled, robbed, attacked, and they just luck their way out of everything along the road. And it's kind of just a romp like that. It is. There are definitely Dungeons and Dragons inspirations in the book. Lots of creatures and maybe even character names or pantheon names will sound familiar to you. But Nicholas also makes up some new stuff. He introduces his own sort of things into this. It feels like a D&D adventure in the sense that the heroes never have a respite, right? It's constantly they move to the next phase, and there's always going to be something they have to overcome in that chapter, and then the next chapter happens and a new thing. And so it very much reads like you're reading notes from an RPG campaign, and it's just all the shit that goes wrong along the way constantly, That's not a knock at the book at all. That's just what it is. That's the whole point of it, right? The whole point of it is these washed up, old mercenaries going on this stupid quest to do something that nobody else is willing to even attempt, and, pulling off everything possible along the way. That is the whole premise. The book is shallow in terms of characterizations. There's a lot of dick jokes and bro humor. It's very much a bro guy book. Like, that's who's supposed to read this book, is bro dudes. Um, it's interesting to me that the society that Nicholas defines in here and the language that society uses is basically the modern day world, just without technology, with magic and insane creatures all over the place. People, they use modern phrasing and phrases. They use idioms like that we're familiar with. It's a very casual read in that regard. You're not trying to, you know, make sense of courtly manners and like that. None of that exists in this. This is just, a very. It reads like a modern book, just set in this fantasy world, and I appreciated that. The female characters they have goals, but they're still just filling a trope basically for the sake of the story, and that's okay. Like they're not. It's not really about that, right? It's just about this group of 5 dudes getting together to go do a thing, and it's fun. It's a fun read. It worked well. I think I rated it 4 or 5 stars on Goodreads, just because as I was reading it, I felt like. Do I like this? I'm not really attached to these characters, but I found myself becoming more emotional in the last 20% of the book. I found I really was invested in these characters' success. When the Act 3 downfall happens, or I should say the Act 2 downfall happens, it was pretty disheartening, and it was like, oh man, But in the end, it turned out to be a really fun read. I saw the ending coming 1,000 miles, 1,000 pages away. It was really obvious what was going to happen, and it happened, and I went, oh yeah, that was totally expected, which sets up the next book and the next book. I think it's supposed to be a trilogy. I'm not sure. But it was just fun. It was just dude fun, right? Like, I don't think there's a lot in here for hardcore fantasy fans. I think that what's in here is for casual fantasy fans, or like I said, like bro guys. Like, just let's do dick jokes and high five each other. Like, that's what's in this book. If you go into it with that expectation, you'll probably really enjoy yourself. If you go into it expecting, like, highbrow characters and goals and modern day sensibilities, you're not going to find any of that. It's none of that. It's all just frat bros doing frat bro things. That's Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. I thought it was fun. If you like that sort of thing, give it a read. Let me know if you've read it, or if you're going to read it, or if you have any comments about that in the comments below. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is neophyte. It is a noun meaning a beginner or novice. Like footmen and upstairs maids, wine stewards are portrayed as acolytes of the privileged, ever eager to intimidate the neophyte and spurn the unwary. Frank J. Prile, former New York Times wine columnist. Neophyte. Neophyte. How does one become like a wine columnist? Like, what do you do for a living? I write about wine. I mean, okay.